Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this panel on how Bitcoin Rails will power the future of commerce. Very happy to be joined by Pavel, Kieran, and Chris. Chaps, just to kick us off, let's just go down the line. Start with you, Pavel. Just a few words: who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pavel. I'm co-CEO of Wirex. Wirex is a London-based fintech. We do a lot of stuff in crypto space and crypto payment space, but most of the people know us for our mobile app and crypto debit card, and we have 6 million users with this product.
Hey, I'm Kieran Parker-Moroney. I'm CSO of NeoSwap. I'm based in London. I was a VC, now turned operator. We make illiquid items liquid, so we let you spend your assets like cash using AI.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Perceptions, and I am part of the Stacks Foundation, supporting growth and founders. Also, as a serial entrepreneur, CEO and founder of No Code Clarity, building on Bitcoin and Stacks and Lightning. Happy to be here.
Thanks all, and as mentioned before, my name's Jamie Crawley. I'm a news reporter at CoinDesk, also based in London. So to get going, Pavel, I'll come to you first on this. I think you're very well placed to talk about this. Just in terms of, give us an oversight of where we are in terms of Bitcoin's usability, if that's a word, as a payment method for goods and services. It's the thing that the measuring stick seems to be, when we'll be able to pay for our coffee with Bitcoin, etc. You're going to be able to tell us right now how we can already do that.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. So, look, most of the people, at least our users, still use Bitcoin as a digital gold rather than payment method, payment instrument. I think from technical perspective, there are a lot of companies, including Wirex, allow you to spend any digital currency, including Bitcoin. So right now, it's possible to buy coffee. I think that's the usual example where you buy Bitcoin, where you buy coffee with Bitcoin. It's now possible. I think there is still there is not enough willingness from community, from people to use Bitcoin as a payment method. What we see in our client base is that there is a use case for stablecoins to pay for things, for goods and services. Bitcoin is the most popular cryptocurrency to spend after stablecoins. But again, I think that there is a just minority of users to use Bitcoin for paying for goods and services at this particular moment.
Mm-hmm. So, what a firm like Wirex and others make available is prepaid debit cards in which can link to Bitcoin you hold on an exchange or in a custodial wallet. Use that as you would any other debit card at the checkout, and it converts Bitcoin into fiat currency, and the merchant's basically none the wiser. Chris, what I just outlined and what Pavel described, is that good enough? Where would you want to see us go in terms of Bitcoin as really powering the future of commerce?
Yeah, so I have family in South Africa, and I'm able to see in real time how, from a different jurisdiction, how they're welcoming of digital assets, specifically Bitcoin. I can send Bitcoin to my family. They can literally go and spend that Bitcoin at the grocery store, or places like Mossel Bay, where they have circular economies, El Salvador, et cetera. I ultimately think that builders and founders need to be thinking about how to build for mass adoption. We're a part of the 1% that is the new 1%, where we're in this conference, we're in this room, we're networking with some of the brightest talents in the world, some of the amazing minds that are in this room. but there's still 99% of the world that they're either living a very hard life, so they don't have the luxury of being able to be at conferences like this, or to even have savings. So the narrative of digital gold, it's good for VC funds, it's good for institutions, it's good for sovereign wealth funds, family offices. But for most, if they receive Bitcoin, it's for the sake of being used as a divisible instrument of value, so for cash. So I think we ultimately need to think about, like, how can we build better rails leveraging Bitcoin, or things that are Bitcoin layers that can scale and have more expression. That's what I'm ultimately looking forward to seeing more of.
Excellent point, Chris. And then looking at this a bit more broadly, Kieran, I'll come to you. In terms of Bitcoin as more of a foundational layer of commerce in terms of representation, digital ownership. Obviously, you know where I'm going with this: NFTs, ordinals, etc. What changes do you see them being possible through those things to payments infrastructure in commerce and elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we use both the base layer like as a currency, and then NFTs or assets like ordinals, as we're trying to make them more liquid. So you're finding these complex trades. So composability, I'd say, is probably the biggest difference for us compared to Web 2. So the example I would use would be eBay, where you want to swap multiple items with people because we can find these trades. And maybe that involves a bit of cash, but also, you know, Jamie, you sending your iPad to Pavel sending some cash to me, and a bike to Chris, and then that all moves. Now that's very challenging in Web 2 world, because maybe you don't send the iPad, or you do and the battery's broken, or the bicycle wheel's broken. Whereas with composability, provable ownership, being able to sign things, you're able to complete these trades and they're atomic. So it makes currency more efficient, and it makes trades that weren't possible before more possible. So from my perspective, it gives us a form of commerce that wasn't available before, and that's part of the power of what we do. So you may only need 1/10 of the currency, and you're already using a harder currency than what's currently available, but then you're also able to use assets that are built on top of that in a way that you wouldn't be in the Web 2 space. So until more stuff either comes on chain, or there's some other form of digital ownership of even real world assets, that's not possible. So that's something that Bitcoin and more broadly cryptocurrencies make available.
It's funny you mentioned Web 2. I was chairing another panel at a different conference a few weeks ago, and the topic then was broad bridging of Web 2 to Web 3 applications. And one of the speakers, unfortunately, I forget who it was, said that if we'd been having such a conversation 3 or 4 years ago, all the barriers we'd be talking about would be technical. And the positive thing is we're largely past that. We know that from a technical point of view, the barriers are perfectly surmountable. The barriers now are more cultural or behavioral. So I'd like to address that. Is that where we are in terms of Bitcoin as a means of paying for goods and services, etc., all the stuff we've been talking about? Pavel?
I tend to agree that I think most of the technical issues are sorted right now, and just wanted to talk a bit more about this kind of the example you just mentioned about Web 2 businesses. So there is probably you've seen this quite a lot. There is a trend right now that a lot of centralized businesses going on chain one way or another. You know, they're launching non-custodial wallets. Some of the companies launching either chain or app chain. But we also see this transition from Web 2 businesses towards like Web 3 businesses, right? You know, new bank in Brazil launching loyalty points on chain. Grab, which is Southeast Asian company, introducing non-custodial wallet. So I think from technical perspective, there is not much issues left, and we also see this transition of Web 2 businesses going on chain one way or another. But in terms of kind of, you know, what are the main blockers for Bitcoin to be used as a currency? Cultural, yes, definitely. Again, is what I mentioned in previously, that most of the people still see Bitcoin is a digital gold, and maybe with the time it will change, especially when the new users come in, because obviously it's not a secret, industry moves in cycles, right? There is a bear market when there is a hype, and there will be another bear market, and with every cycle market expands quite a lot. So when new users comes, that's actually the good point to educate them about this payment use case of Bitcoin. So cultural, yes, definitely happens, and I think another thing is merchant adoption, because in order to use Bitcoin as a payment instrument, you need to convince all the merchants in the world to accept Bitcoin. And it will take time, and there are two ways to do that, right? You either can, like we, for example, with Wirex, we can leverage existing merchant networks of Visa, MasterCard, or it will just take a bit of time to convince merchants and incentivize merchants to accept crypto.
Yeah. Chris, would you like to come in there?
I think that, again, it just goes back to us building for mass adoption, and doing so, all of those nuances will be tended to, and people will become more welcoming of actually utilizing it because it's practical. So for example, my company, we did some research, and we studied that in remittance-heavy markets, they use WhatsApp exclusively almost as like the communication channel. So they're sending value already, billion active users monthly for WhatsApp. There's never been a bridge to create the ability for people to do remittance in a digital fashion through WhatsApp. Because these markets, they also have one thing in common. They're extremely interested in digital assets, such as Bitcoin. So what we did was we created a tool that meets people where they are. It's called Raise Sats, and it allows for a person to connect their Xverse wallet with a WhatsApp number, no KYC, non-custodial, and they can send and receive Bitcoin through WhatsApp. So I think meeting people where they are is important. And the more we do that, the more people are going to say, hey, not only can I use this as a store of value, but I also can use this in real time. I can use this on NeoSwap. I can use this anywhere that I want to, because not only is this decentralized software, not only is this digital gold an ascending value asset, but also something that is divisible. So I think we're on the right path.
And then Kieran.
Yeah, I mean, I think two things that come to mind for me. One is cultural, as we've touched on, and that's people. I think there's a generational divide to some degree, people wrapping their heads around the idea of digital scarcity and digital money. I think that's a lot more native to certain people than others, and that stops part of the adoption. People, a lot of these things, right, it's kind of like in the art world, there's a shared mythology. If everyone believes in it, it's real. If they don't understand it, they won't adopt it. And then from a technical perspective, I think you're right. Where I would say I'd classify this as technical is UX for adoption as well. I think that's still a big problem. It's intimidating for a lot of people, especially people beyond this room. My sister can pick up the Revolut app tomorrow and it's quite easy for her. But if I start trying to show her how to use wallets and that these transactions are immutable and can't be reversed, that's really intimidating for her, and if she wants to get something right or wrong. I think that's being worked on a lot. There's Xverse and Hero doing a great job on that. Other wallets, I can't mention them all, but I do think UX is a technical aspect that still needs to be improved a lot.
I'll just let you come back on that, Pavel, because obviously what Wirex does is it is a slick and everything user experience. What are the sort of how do you think that's the key tenets of that have been achieved by yourselves, and equally how could it be improved further?
Well, first of all, I do agree that UX one of the kind of the main blockers actually for wider adoption. And so Wirex is a custodial app, so that's why we were able to provide the better user experience compared to non-custodial apps. But I think the future for like the true crypto payments in non-custodial space and on-chain, and for that, I think it's quite interesting. But I do think that infrastructure layer, which was quite popular during the last hype and during DeFi summer, we do have a very decent infrastructure. And I think this new generation of apps, super apps, the apps with a greater UX, it's what will be driving the next hype. So I'm sorry, I'm not answering your question directly, but what I'm saying is that I do think that there is a huge gap right now, and there is a huge demand for apps with a better UX, especially in non-custodial space. It's relatively easy to provide a good user experience in like custodial space or in like Revolut-like environment, but I don't think it's the future. I think the future is non-custodial, on-chain, and I think we will see very soon a lot of applications providing a good user experience, removing, let's say, gas abstraction from user experience, removing this, defragmented liquidity on different chains. And yeah, I think overall it will be seamless experience, not just for Bitcoin, but for multiple cryptocurrencies.
It's a nice segue to my final question. We've got a few minutes left, but I'll come to each of you with this one. Starting with you, Chris. This is obviously a Bitcoin conference. A lot of the things we've been talking about could equally apply to any number of digital currencies. You were talking about stable coins before, Pavel. Chris, why do you make a case for why it would be specifically Bitcoin that could power the future of commerce as opposed to any other number of digital currencies?
Great question. So I personally believe that it is a multi-chain world, but if we're being real and just talking about facts, without Bitcoin, none of this would exist. So Bitcoin being this 14-year-old, let's personify Bitcoin as a person. Bitcoin is a 14-year-old, and nation states are clamoring about it. Regulators are trying to figure it out, and there is something just different innately about Bitcoin. Therefore, I think it's a matter of focusing on what is stable from the standpoint of staying power, not being hacked, having the decentralization, having the ability to do security, but also having the ability to create layers on top of it, such as stacks, that allows for scalability and greater outputs of expression. Leveraging Clarity smart contracts, it's very modular in the sense of being amazing software to build upon, which is why we also have innovations like the Lightning Network. So I think bare minimum, people, when they're entering into Web3, they need to have an understanding of Bitcoin. We all have free will, so people are going to do what they please, but look at Bitcoin, look at L2 such as stacks, and learn how this could work for you. It's one thing for us to kind of wax poetic about technical nuances, and infrastructure is deeply important. But most people, when they're driving a car, they don't know how the engine works. They just want their car to work. So I think for Bitcoin, it just works. And for people who want to do specific things with Bitcoin, it works perfectly for that. If you're looking for scalability, that's where L2s on Bitcoin really come into play. So it's the best place for people to be. That's personally my belief regarding Bitcoin.
Thanks, Chris. Kieran.
Yeah, I mean, I think confidence is a huge thing, right? You say it's the oldest. People know, at least for now, they feel confident it's not going anywhere. We kind of have a thesis that's continuing to evolve, but that Bitcoin is a base layer that will make sense for higher value things to settle on there. And then going back to my point earlier about composability and a multi-chain world, that you'd be able to, whether it's L2s or other chains, use those potentially for lower value items and then still benefit at the end of the day from the security of Bitcoin as a settlement layer for higher value items. So I think confidence is just a huge part of that. It's the Lindy effect type thing. It's been through a lot of ups and downs, 14 years now. I mean, even the last 6 months, we've seen how many different once-in-a-lifetime events happen. And it's still around. So for me, again, goes back to a shared collective belief. If everyone sees that it's stuck around, that provides people comfort in wanting to use that as a base layer versus something that's unproven and new. So it benefits from the time perspective there, and then composability.
Mm-hmm. And then Pavel.
I do agree with what the gentleman just mentioned. Look, Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency. There are more Bitcoin holders than any other cryptocurrencies. And Bitcoin is the largest brand in cryptocurrency world. When Bitcoin price going up, it's the best marketing for entire crypto industry. I think the only thing which is missing is just this kind of the layer for make it a bit more programmable and built on top of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin as a blockchain, as a cryptocurrency, is very well positioned to be the kind of underlying base layer. I do believe there is a multi-chain world, but I think there is just so much more stuff you can do with Bitcoin, and it's more. Yes, it requires a bit technical work, engineering work, but I do believe there is a future where you can build more stuff on top of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'll add a couple of thoughts of my own on this. Bitcoin seems to me, by its nature, it's a go slow network, and it almost as if all the other networks they can experiment. They can experiment with DAOs, experiment with NFTs. They can experiment with all manner of other things, and the stuff that works and the stuff that is worth sticking with will find its way to Bitcoin, as we've started seeing this year with NFTs through ordinals and so forth, as has been discussed a lot about. So Bitcoin is, because if it's the gold standard blockchain, it is the quality layer. And then another point, a more holistic one the comparison I like to make is, if we think about, as we often like to compare cryptocurrency to the internet, Bitcoin being the original, Bitcoin is the equivalent of email, and whether Bitcoin will ever be the equivalent of the World Wide Web, it's questionable. But the point is, even now, your entry point to anything on the internet is an email address. Try doing anything on the internet without an email address. You can't, can you? Well, you might be able to, but nothing I can think of. So the base layer, the base entry point for anything in the cryptocurrency world may well always be Bitcoin, no matter what else happens on any of the networks.
Yeah.
Have I got that right?
I like that. I mean, I think some people can roll their eyes, but it's often seen as the adult in the room. Like you say, it's the go slow.
Yeah.
And there are pros and cons to that, which is why multi-chain makes sense, because other people can go and experiment. And we are on other chains I won't mention, redacted, but it helps because we can experiment and then bring lessons back, and you've seen that with NFTs and ordinals. But by not jumping at the newest, shiniest thing all the time, that provides benefits and stability, and you're seen as the kind of elder statesman, as it were.
We've got 30 seconds left, so Chris, take us home.
The base layer is where it all starts. It's one thing for a person to architect the future of a home, for example, but what is a home without a foundation? The foundation of everything Web3 is Bitcoin, period. So I personally think that Bitcoin and Bitcoin L2s, such as stacks, will help project what the future of Web3 looks like. And globally, it's going to impact. So all of us are revolutionaries of the future, if you will, but we're just building in real time now. But I look forward to seeing that foundation complete and how Bitcoin is going to help change the world.
Right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Very interesting points. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us, and do join me in giving a round of applause to our three panelists.
Thanks, Jamie.